Think you know Coraline? Think again. This eerie masterpiece from Laika isn't just a kid's movie. From hidden ghosts and cursed props to bizarre behind-the-scenes rituals, here are 20 weird and surprising facts about Coraline. Fact 1. The costumes in Coraline were works of microscopic art. Laika's costume designer, Deborah Cook, created every piece of clothing: Coraline's raincoat, Wybie's jacket, the other mother's elegant dresses by hand. But because the puppets were only about 9 inches tall, the stitches had to be 1/6 the size of a human stitch. Cook used custom-made needles smaller than a human hair and sewed with silk thread so fine it had to be handled under a magnifying lens. Even Coraline's jeans were hand-stitched with fake miniature seams and a tiny zipper that actually worked. The attention to detail was insane. The crew even aged the clothes using sandpaper and paint to make them look worn. Fact 2. Every frame of Coraline was handmade literally. The movie took nearly 4 years to complete because it was animated at only 24 frames per second, with each frame requiring the set and puppets to be physically adjusted. That means every single second of film took about 100 movements to create. Some scenes took an entire week just to film a few seconds. The production team built over 150 miniature sets, used more than 250,000 facial expressions, and crafted every prop by hand, from the garden plants to the tiny food. Director Henry Selick, the same visionary behind The Nightmare Before Christmas, described it as painting with time. The result was a film that didn't just look handmade, it felt alive. Every blink, every flicker of candlelight was born from human patience, not CGI. Fact 3. Here's a weird fact. Coraline had a real treasure hunt hidden in the real world. Before the film's release, Laika secretly buried 50 handcrafted boxes across the globe. Each box contained an original Coraline prop miniature furniture, tiny keys, bits of costume, even small fragments of film strips along with a numbered certificate. Fans were given cryptic clues online, leading to scavenger hunts that lasted months. Some boxes were found in comic shops, libraries, and even buried in parks. A few remain unfound to this day. It was one of the first major studio ARGs and blurred the line between fiction and reality. The message was clear. Coraline's world doesn't just exist behind a door, it exists wherever curiosity leads. Fact 4. If you've read Neil Gaiman's novella, you'll notice one major difference: Wybie. Coraline's eccentric neighbor and reluctant ally doesn't appear in the book at all. Director Henry Selick created him specifically for the movie to give Coraline someone to talk to, otherwise much of the story would be her alone. Wybie was designed to represent skepticism and companionship, balancing Coraline's impulsiveness. Selick also admitted that Wybie gave audiences a grounded anchor, someone real to contrast with the other world's artificial perfection. Neil Gaiman loved the addition, calling Wybie a fantastic improvement that adds emotional warmth. Fact 5. In one early scene, the other mother bakes Coraline a welcome home cake, a seemingly sweet gesture. But eagle-eyed viewers noticed something strange. The icing letters are written in perfect cursive, except for one. The O in home is double-looped, a secret symbol that handwriting experts say represents deceit. In old-fashioned penmanship, a double-looped O was thought to mean the writer was lying. Fans believe this was Laika's hidden hint that the other mother's world was too perfect to trust. It's a subtle, creepy Easter egg that reveals the truth long before Coraline does. Even the frosting had meaning, hand-piped under a magnifying lens with real sugar paste. The cake was an edible prop that took 2 days to craft for a single 5-second shot. Fact 6. The 3 ghost children trapped behind the mirror weren't random. They were inspired by real historical figures that fascinated Neil Gaiman. Each one reflects a different era and personality. The Victorian girl was modeled after child portraits from the 1800s. The sailor boy's design came from early 1900s, photographs of lost-at-sea memorials. And the pink-haired girl was based on a 1950s suburban archetype. The film's designers created unique puppet textures for each sailor's translucent skin, even had tiny salt-like crystals embedded in it. To make their voices sound ethereal, the actors recorded their lines inside a closet lined with mirrors, while the sound team slowed the audio slightly and layered it with soft breathing sounds. The result was ghostly, but human-trapped souls who felt heartbreakingly real. According to Selick, the ghost children represent innocence devoured by desire, the price of wanting too much. That theme runs deep through Coraline, every child who fell for the other mother's promise. Fact 7. To make the other world feel subtly disorienting, several scenes were filmed upside down literally. Animators rotated entire sets 180 degrees, while puppets were anchored on magnetic rigs. This allowed the camera to capture floating dust, dangling fabric, and unnatural gravity shifts that made everything feel just slightly wrong. Even Coraline's body movements were animated to appear weightless, her steps a little too smooth. The lighting team used inverted shadows, placing the light sources below the set instead of above, so shadows would fall in unnatural directions. emotions. Selick explained that it was a subconscious trick. You can't put your finger on why it feels off, but your brain knows it's wrong. The result was mesmerizing. Viewers didn't consciously notice the inversion, but it created the uncanny dreamlike sensation that defines Coraline. The process was so complex that even minor shots took days to film. Fact 8. When Neil Gaiman first wrote Coraline, he intended it as a whimsical adventure for his young daughter Holly, but when he read her the first few chapters, she was terrified. She asked him to stop reading and didn't speak about it for weeks. Gaiman took it as the ultimate compliment. He said, "If a child is brave enough to finish Coraline, they've earned their courage." His daughter eventually did and loved it. The story grew from Gaiman's fascination with fairy tales that were beautiful but cruel, and his fear that children's stories had become too safe. He wanted to write something that respected children's intelligence and their ability to face fear. Years later, Holly visited the film set and admitted the movie scared her even more than the book. Gaiman joked, "That's how I knew we got it right." Coraline isn't just a children's story, it's a rite of passage wrapped in clay, shadow, and courage. Fact 9. Coraline's blue hair might seem simple, but it's one of the most complex stop-motion creations ever attempted. Each strand was made from real human hair, dyed blue, and individually glued onto her scalp. The animators then coated it with a fine layer of silicone to keep it flexible, yet stable enough to pose frame by frame. Every time Coraline moved, even slightly, the animators had to adjust dozens of hair positions by hand to make it flow naturally. Some scenes required up to 10 hours just to animate a few seconds of her head turning. The team experimented with wire and magnets before finally finding the right combination of materials. In total, Coraline's hair had over 20 different models for various lighting and weather conditions. Fact 10. Coraline's voice sounds perfectly in between childhood innocence and teenage attitude because it was. The character was voiced by Dakota Fanning, who was only 13 when she recorded her lines. Director Henry Selick said her voice gave Coraline the exact mix of curiosity and rebellion the character needed. To make her performance feel authentic, Fanning was allowed to improvise certain lines, especially Coraline's sarcastic remarks. But recording wasn't easy because stop motion takes so long, Fanning had to return to re-record dialogue over several years, meaning her voice matured mid-production. The audio team had to carefully edit her takes to keep her tone consistent throughout the film. In the end, her natural voice helped Coraline feel like a real kid. Fact 11. Coraline was groundbreaking for its use of 3D printing, a first in animation history. Laika used a 3D printer to create thousands of interchangeable facial expressions for each character. Instead of sculpting every face by hand, they digitally designed expressions using software and printed them out layer by layer. This allowed animators to switch Coraline's mouth, eyes, and brows to create natural movement and complex emotions. Over 200,000 different facial components were printed for the film, but there was one problem. The seams where the pieces connected were sometimes visible. Instead of hiding them digitally, the filmmakers decided to keep them, giving Coraline's world a slightly imperfect, handmade look. It was a bold, creative choice, and it made the movie feel more tactile, eerie, and real. Fact 12. That breathtaking garden in the other world, the one that blossoms into Coraline's face, wasn't CGI magic. It was entirely handmade, and it took 688 hours to animate the blooming sequence alone. The garden consisted of hundreds of miniature flowers crafted from silicone, paper, and painted metal. Each flower was designed with internal wiring, so animators could grow them frame by frame, twisting and stretching petals into bloom. The sequence required 30 different lighting passes to achieve the luminous glow of dawn. The effect was so intricate that Selick called it the single most complicated shot in the movie. Some flowers even contained fiber optic lights that pulsed like veins when Coraline looked at them. What's eerie is how perfectly the beauty mirrors deception the other world gives Coraline everything she wants, but it's all hollow underneath. Fact 13. The hauntingly sweet and terrifying contrast between Coraline's two mothers came from one actress, Terry Hatcher. She performed both roles, the loving but distracted real mother and the sinister, manipulative other mother. Hatcher recorded the voices months apart to ensure each had a distinct emotional tone. For the other mother, she lowered her voice and recorded in near darkness to capture a chilling stillness. As the film progresses, her vocal performance subtly shifts, becoming sharper and colder with every scene, mirroring the character's physical transformation. Hatcher said it was one of the most emotionally exhausting roles of her career. Her ability to sound warm, then monstrous, without ever changing characters, gave Coraline one of its most unforgettable dualities. A villain that literally sounds like love turned inside out. Fact 14. That creepy, squishy sound when Coraline crawls through the tunnel to the other world? It wasn't computer-generated. It came from a sound designer wearing wet rubber gloves and squishing them in slime. Foley artists experimented with all kinds of materials, pudding, jello, soaked fabric, until they found the perfect mix of gross and organic. They layered those sounds with reversed whispers and low bass rumbles to create the unsettling sense of traveling through something alive. The goal was for the tunnel to sound biological, like a throat or vein. The result was so effective that even test audiences squirmed. Sound designer Christopher Boyes described it as the sound of curiosity becoming a mistake. Fact 15. Those shiny black buttons that replaced the other mother's eyes became one of the film's most haunting visuals and one of its hardest props to create. Each button was hand-sculpted, painted, and polished to catch light differently depending on the scene. Animators had to figure out how to make a character emote without real eyes, relying entirely on head tilts, shadows, and mouth movements to express emotion. The button's reflective surface made them nearly impossible to light without glare, forcing the team to constantly adjust the set's angles. Director Henry Selick described the process as animating emotion through emptiness. The idea came directly from Neil Gaiman's novella. He wanted the buttons to symbolize control, like sewing one's identity shut. By the end of production, over 600 button eyes were crafted, each one slightly different to match the mood of the scene. Fact 16. That mysterious black cat who moves between worlds with Coraline wasn't just animated from imagination. He was based on a real stray cat that lived near Laika's Portland studio. The crew fed and studied the cat for months, observing how it slinked, blinked, and reacted to humans. They noticed its slow, deliberate walk and the way its tail seemed to move like an independent creature, details they transferred directly to the film. The animators built the puppet using tiny ball and socket joints that allowed unprecedented flexibility, giving the cat lifelike subtlety in every movement. Even the cat's fur was real animal hair applied in multiple layers, hand-combed before each shot. Actor Keith David, who voiced the cat, brought a velvet-like confidence to the role, calm, enigmatic, and faintly smug. Selick said the cat was meant to represent instinct and wisdom, a being that doesn't need to explain itself. Fact 17. That unsettling tune the jumping mice perform in the other world isn't just strange, it's literally backward. Composer Bruno Coulet created the music in reverse first, then layered it with lyrics sung in a made-up language that sounds playful and eerie at the same time. When played backward, the lyrics spell out fragments of hidden phrases and nonsense syllables that give the illusion of meaning but don't quite make sense. The idea was to make the audience subconsciously uneasy, like something was off but couldn't be explained. Sound engineers mixed multiple animal noises and reversed whisper tracks underneath the melody, giving the song an uncanny, dreamlike texture. Henry Selick said the goal was to mimic the logic of a dream, almost understandable, but wrong. The effect worked perfectly. Many fans reported getting chills from the tune, even without realizing why. Fact 18. If you stay until the end of the credits, you'll see a strange message that says, "For those in the know, jerk wad." It seems random, but it's actually a secret password referencing one of the crew's inside jokes. During production, animators hid Easter eggs and jokes throughout the film to entertain themselves during long shooting hours. The jerk wad message became a way to reward die-hard fans who stayed until the end, much like the secret code Neil Gaiman included in his original manuscript drafts. Some fans believe it references YB's nickname, "Why Were You Born?" while others think it's just Laika's cheeky way of saying thanks to the devoted viewers who noticed every detail. Fact 19. The other mother's final spider-like transformation didn't come out of nowhere. The clues were hidden from the very beginning. Her clothes, her furniture, even the house itself were all designed with subtle spider imagery. The wallpaper patterns mimic webs. Her dining table resembles a web's radial structure, and her hands grow thinner with each visit until she literally becomes the spider that lures Coraline into her trap. The animators used mechanical spider limbs in her final form, operated by micromotors so they could twitch unnaturally. Her voice also changes. Terry Hatcher's performance was digitally stretched and layered with insect-clicking noises to mimic the rhythm of a spider's legs. The symbolism was deliberate. The beldam, beautiful lady, is a predator of comfort, feeding on longing and love. Fact 20. Many of Coraline's sets were unbelievably tiny, so much so that some scenes had to be shot through custom-built microscope lenses. The tiniest prop in the movie was a needle only 0.02 inches wide, used for a sewing shot of the other mother's button eyes. The camera operators used tweezers to move objects, and sometimes had to breathe through straws to avoid fogging the lens. Lighting these miniature sets was even harder. The team built LED rigs smaller than fingernails to mimic moonlight and candle flicker. The smallest functioning prop was a working cuckoo clock with moving gears no larger than grains of rice. Laika's animators called it microsurgery with clay. And there you have it, 20 weird and surprising facts about Coraline, 2009. The film that turned childhood wonder into something hauntingly beautiful. Which fact gave you chills the most? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell for more deep dives into the dark corners of movie magic.